Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Dr. Joan, I am so happy to have you here. Thanks for being here.
I love it. I'm so glad to join you.
Yeah, this is great. And I love the work that you do. It's so helpful in the conversation around emotional eating and helping people. And I've just learned or relearned about your background. So tell us first about your background regarding eating disorders.
I was hired, I won't even tell you the years because it goes back a ways, at UCLA's Student Psychological Services. It was in the 1900s. Late 1900s, how's that? And I was their eating disorder specialist for roughly 6 years. And I worked extensively during that time with mostly women, but also men who struggled with anorexia, bulimia, and compulsive overeating.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. So a lot earlier on before it was more understood, I would imagine. So you guys were probably in the forefront of that.
Yes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Michael Strober's work, but Michael Strober I had contact with Michael Strober and Carol Otis, who would talk about the athletic triad and the whole thing. So, yes.
That's great. And what I love and what I really wanted you to be here to talk about is really your work around emotions and emotional work, because of course, you know, my work is around emotional eating, and it's not about the food. Clearly, it's all about, you know, managing and negotiating one's emotions. And so we have such synergy around that. And so I really want to dig into your work. You've done amazing TED Talks around this. And so talk to me about, you know, really your hypothesis and the work that you do around emotions.
I'd love to. Thank you. Let me start actually with where I would start with the people at UCLA. Because when I'd have to do a very formal evaluation, kind of a routine intake for people coming in. And towards the end of that conversation, I would always say to them that what they were struggling with had nothing to do with food, weight, or appearance. And they'd give me one of these, like, what are you talking about kind of thing. And then I would say the challenge really is that, and the problem that you're facing is that you have difficulty tolerating thoughts, needs, feelings, and perceptions. And 99% of the time I would get a kind of a quick acknowledgement. And I'd say, so the first thing we have to pay attention to is to understand that food, weight, and appearance are a distraction. You don't have an eating disorder, you have an emotional management disorder.
Amen, sister. That's awesome. And very revolutionary in that realm, I'm sure.
Well, I wasn't out to make friends. I was out to help people. So I mean, that's how I would start. So so much of my work is centered around what I would call people's challenges, mastering, if you will, difficult emotions or difficult feelings, and that it, believe it or not, it's actually centered around simply 8 feelings. And that people, because I think those are the 8 feelings are the most common feeling outcomes of things not turning out the way we want.
Okay, say that one more time.
That it's centered around 8 feelings. So I've been a little bit of a teaser here. I centered around 8 feelings, and it's those 8 feelings because those 8 are the kind of represent the most common feeling outcomes of things not turning out the way we want.
Okay. All right. So give it to me.
Give it to you. You want it straight or you want it? Yes. So the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration.
And those are the feelings we most don't want to feel.
Right. And they're the most common feeling outcomes of things turning out a way that we don't want.
Okay. Gotcha. So if something doesn't go our way, it's one of those 8 feelings.
That's one or more. So I can be angry and disappointed that something didn't turn out well.
Right. All right. Will you do that list again?
Of course. It's sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration.
Okay, I can see how it would be several. It could be several at one time. I mean, you could feel helpless and then get angry because you feel helpless. Yeah.
But actually, if you got angry because you were feeling helpless, I would see the anger as a distraction from the helplessness.
Right. I totally agree with you. And right, because anger is a secondary emotion. It's usually fear or something deeper.
Yeah, but I don't really buy into fear.
Yeah, you don't. Well, but helplessness is a feeling that evokes fear. I mean, that's if we feel helpless, to me, it sends off signals that I'm going to be stuck this, like I am immobilized, I'm stuck this way, and there's never a way to get out.
Okay.
Right. And then the reaction would be anger, just as sort of a fight or flight.
Could be. Yeah, could be. I think I reserve the word fear for other things.
Okay.
I'm very picky about words. So if you want to go down this way, we can. If you don't, then we don't have to. So.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about shame some, because that's sometimes a misunderstood emotion.
Right.
And so talk to me about that.
I would see shame in some ways as an extension of embarrassment. But rather than, and shame really, if you think about it, is sort of designed as think of it as kind of an ethical break, like a BRAKE.
Mm-hmm.
And
okay.
or a relation in some ways kind of a relational break. And again, it's BRAKE, like a stopping thing. So if I'm running around and jumping on the couches with my dirty, muddy feet, and my mother or father or some caretaker says to me, "Oh, Joan, you shouldn't be doing that." It's like, right. So then I go, "Oh," and I feel probably embarrassed, but I go internal and feel shame. So it's an effort to actually have me learn internally to have me not do something, right, that's considered bad, right?
Right.
So, but shame. So there's a difference, and I'm going to make a distinction that most people talk about. Most people talk about guilt as doing something bad, and shame as being bad, as having a flawed self.
Right.
And if you look at it from a biological standpoint, one of the ways that shame gets defined is that it's a biological strategy for withdrawal.
Okay. And there's hence the break you're talking about.
Yes, right. There's the break. Okay. Except the challenge is that people take something that's more momentary, and they take the experience of shame in the moment, that's that break, and they turn it into, I'm a bad self, I'm a flawed self.
Right.
As opposed to just the feeling experience of shame.
Yeah. And so what causes somebody to internalize it in that permanent kind of way? Is it biology? Is it, because that's very common for emotional eaters. That's very common, is that, certain situations we had it early on in our life, we internalized, and we've just got this stain of shame, that we carry with us throughout our lives but some people don't. Some people it just rolls off somebody's back, or it is a momentary thing. So what makes the difference between internalizing it and shrugging something off?
Well, so you're asking what I think is actually a very profound question there, Tricia, because no, really, seriously, because to me, the answer is actually somewhat nuanced. So let me see if I can kind of follow this through with you. I think that two things. When we go through experiences that are painful, sometimes what we do is we develop beliefs, we hold attitudes, and we make decisions that are sometimes even more painful, that cause even more pain than the experience itself.
Yep.
So that's the first thing to understand, that I go through this painful experience. Now maybe this painful experience is something that, I feel sad or angry about. I have a hard time with feeling sad or angry. And so now what I do is I go, well, I must be a rotten person. And now I'm just a rotten person who doesn't belong.
Right.
And now I'm holding an attitude and making a decision that doesn't even fit it goes well beyond whatever the circumstance is, right?
Right.
So when somebody then takes that decision and persists in it, I think of it as a distraction from unpleasant feelings.
Oh, even though it's subconscious so much of the time?
I don't think it's subconscious.
Okay.
That's not true. That's not true. I think elements of it are subconscious. Mm-hmm. I think once we can develop the awareness or gain the awareness that we've made those kinds of decisions or hold those kind of attitudes or beliefs, then they become more conscious. We can make a decision and we can move out of that. But by and large, if you look at the kind of the body of my work, one element of it is that harsh self-criticism, negative self-talk, negative self-evaluation, whatever we want to call it, to me is a distractor or distraction from unpleasant feelings.
Right. Yeah. And that's why we go down that harsher route, is simply because, it seemed like a better choice because it was a distraction from this momentary unpleasant feeling, and it ends up just being worse.
Well, I don't know. I think we do it. I think we do it for a different reason. Okay. I think we do it because initially we may not have the awareness of why we did it, right? Depending on when it occurred in our life. But when we persist in it, and if we do it with awareness, and if we persist in it, then we're doing it so that we can be in charge of the bad feelings, the unpleasant feelings, as opposed to just feeling the unpleasant feelings. Yeah,
well, so that's why I asked about the subconscious, because let's take, for example, somebody who was sexually abused, as I was. And so, and then typically, as I did, we eat and we cover up our emotions, our uncomfortable emotions with food. And then we get overweight, and then we hate our bodies, right? And that's a whole nother road we go down. And is that kind of what you're talking about? Like, we go down a whole nother road simply because that experience was so unpleasant, and we're trying to avoid those feelings.
Right. So think of, you can see my hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So think of my hand. This part of my hand is representing unpleasant feelings.
Mm-hmm.
This becomes the eating. This becomes, and then there's probably another layer on top of that, which is the negative self-talk. And so now we've got 2 or 3 problems layered over the very thing that if we just paid attention to it, we would heal.
Yep. And obviously, as kids, we don't exactly have the tools to do that. That's why.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it is a subconscious habit, because we don't, it's like what it works, but we don't even know what we're doing it. In the moment, it's what's available to us, and that's what we do.
Right.
So, and obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but from my standpoint, the real hope of unraveling that, getting back down to the hand itself, is to go there and to go back to those feelings and examine those and sort of unpack the whole thing. Right?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And so how can people do that in a way that, because we're just talking about like, oh, you just feel your feelings, you just go through those feelings. Well, that's, we've spent a lifetime running from that very feeling. So it's not that easy.
Right.
So how do you recommend people do that? The fear of the feeling is much worse than the feeling itself. That's been my experience.
Yes. So I've spent a lifetime trying to figure out why it is that most of us don't like to feel unpleasant feelings. And what I have come to since the neuroscience that started to come out in the early 2000s on is that one of the things to recognize is that one of the ways we come to know our emotional feelings is by how we experience it in our body. So when a feeling fires off in our brain, we have a reaction and a feeling fires off in our brain, we get this, what people would call kind of a biochemical rush running through our body. And that rush actually activates bodily sensations.
Okay.
And it's a biological rush of neurohormones, and right, it's coursing through our bloodstream. And then within 60 to 90 seconds, it kind of abates and it flushes out of our system. So in the talk that I did, I called it kind of a biochemical rush and then a biochemical flush. Now, the interesting thing is when that feeling is kind of coursing through our body, we come to know the feeling again by bodily sensation. So maybe it's a pit in our stomach, maybe it's sweating or turning red, or who knows what it'll be. And the notion here is that, again, that lasts roughly 60 to 90 seconds. And what dawned on me is that it's not that we don't want to feel stuff. I think everybody actually wants to be able to experience the whole range of their feelings, from the pleasant to the unpleasant. And what dawned on me is that it's the bodily sensation that we find so uncomfortable. That helps us, the bodily sensation that helps us know what we are feeling emotionally is what we find so uncomfortable. And if we can tolerate, if you will, that bodily sensation, then we can stay with the emotional feeling aspect of it long enough to understand what we are feeling emotionally and to gain the insight that comes with it.
That's interesting.
So the key here is for people to, if you will, to take a deep breath when they start to get activated, feeling whatever it is, that, anger, or, one of my clients used to feel heat in the back of her neck when she got angry. And another one her arms would get hot when she would get angry. So it's like you just have to start to learn your own bodily cues for the various feelings, and then just know you need to stay with that bodily sensation 60 to 90 seconds. And my thing is, most people can handle 60 to 90 seconds, right? So you take a deep breath, you stay with the feeling or feelings, and then you don't open your mouth until, if it's going up like this and the intensity's up there, you're not speaking at that point. You wait until it's down the other side. And then it's, again, we're talking 60 to 90 seconds. Usually it doesn't even last that long, but that's the range that I give it. And I borrowed that from a neuroscientist. So
the 90-second rule then is sit with it and breathe through it, right?
Yeah.
Breathing probably helps.
Absolutely.
What else can you do to persist through that 90 seconds? Because that can be a long time for some people.
Well, I think the key really is understanding that it usually doesn't even last that long.
Yeah.
The intensity, the only thing that I think lasts with that kind of intensity is probably a profound kind of grief, sadness reaction, or something that is intensely angry. The other ones, I don't think the intensity, drops off actually long before that 90 seconds.
So I'm thinking of things that are embarrassing. Let's say I do something really stupid and
let's drop the stupid first.
I
won't go there.
I do something I really wish I hadn't done.
There you go. That's better.
And it is noticed. So it's not just that I know I did it. The worst is if a whole bunch of other people know I did it, right?
Okay, cool. Got it.
And the moment of shame and embarrassment and disappointment, you probably put them all in there together. That moment is so intense.
Right.
But I know from experience, from having done these things and gone through this, that it will reoccur often with the thought of what I did.
You mean the experience will reoccur?
The physical experience of that shame and all that it'll flash over and over and over again. But I can see how it might diminish with time, but we're talking a lot of a big sequence of 90 seconds, not necessarily all in a row, but throughout the day.
Okay, so you're talking about something separate here. So,
Okay.
and that's again another really important question. So understand that the first incident of it, you felt whatever you felt, and it probably lasts 60 to 90 seconds. Now, every time you recall the memory, refire everything that's associated to the memory.
Right.
So it's not like and then, this is where I think people get confused, is like, well, I'm sad or I'm depressed, and it just keeps on lasting and lasting and lasting and lasting and lasting. It's because you keep thinking the same thought and keep activating the same feelings.
Right.
Right? So it's not that it's just one long, protracted experience typically. It's that every time you think that embarrassing situation, then you refire everything that was associated with it, which means that you're going to refire the same approximate neural firing pattern that is the embarrassment in the body or whatever.
Yeah. So what do you do in a situation like that? Because that's literally, I've had that way too many times to count. And it's true. It's like, I can go to a movie and be distracted for 2 hours and be happy as can be. And then I come out of the movie and I'm like, and I remember, like, that was not a dream. That was real, what happened. And I remember, and I'm just in that dread feeling again. So it's hard not to go there. It's hard not to remember. It could be something like a death. Like, you go to sleep and when you wake up, the first few seconds, you're feeling fine. And then you remember your spouse died, and it's like, it's all over again, reactivated. So it's like, it's lots of different situations.
Right. So grief, I would parse out and say, we got to look at grief.
Yeah. That's a whole nother system.
Because I think, I again, with the grief, if I go there for a moment, if I think about the grief experience, depending on how long someone has been with somebody, then you literally have all the same routine patterns embedded in your brain. So if the two of you got up for 35 years and had the same cup of coffee, right? And you've got that routine, just like, it's like so embedded as a track in your brain.
Yeah.
So that actually has to undo as you develop new patterns. So we got to
I jumped tracks there. So let's get back to the embarrassing.
Okay. So let's go the embarrassment route. So what to do in that situation? So the first thing is, you go through it the first time. Now let's say you're down the 7th or 8th time throughout the day, thinking about it, and you're going, wait a minute, it's over. I can't keep on reliving this. So the key thing here is that you recognize that you're trying to do what I call undo something that was done.
Change the past.
You can't do that.
Right.
So part of it is recognizing what was, and if you're in it for the 7th or 8th time, again, run it through, but this time start to ask yourself the question, what is it that I can learn from this?
Yes, I love that.
And to stay with it, the experience, until you get the answer or answers to that question.
And isn't it amazing? That is that really unlocks the whole thing. That is such a healing question, because then you're pulling a positive out of a negative. Right.
Yeah. It's what in the grief framework that I developed, it's what I call extracting the good.
I love it. Right. Oh my gosh. This is such good stuff. I love it. Great stuff. So
that's why I love what I do.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I do too. And it's because this is all so germane to the emotional eater's experience and really unpacking emotional eating, because it's the emotions. That's what stumbles us every time. That's what trips us up. So
Yep.
Wow. Well, this has been great. I just, we have to have more conversations. It's just fun. It's really fun. And, yeah, we'll do it again soon for sure. But you've given everybody a gift here today by just having this conversation, so people can think more and really dig into their emotional responses to life and their physical responses, to their emotions. And it's so important to be looking at that, because it's not about the food, it's not about the weight, it's not about the extra pounds. It's really about our responses and and experiences of our emotions and what we do with that. So, Joan, thank you so much. I have one parting question for you. The action steps, I know you've got a lot of things people can do to get started, and they can obviously access your information following this interview. But my parting question to you is, what is your deepest hunger?
What is my deepest hunger?
Yeah.
My deepest hunger really is the drive to get my work out into the world to support people so that they can feel freed up to what I call live lives of choice and possibility.
I love that. That's beautiful. Well, I completely honor you and support you for that. That's great, and support you in that. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this show and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.